You have to read between the lines. When certain things all happen, you know that there's a force behind that. And if there's no visible force, you have to assume that that force is in the occult, because that's when we got to see the first broad stroke of global governance. Now, I don't know who's running it, and AI can go into woo woo, but just say it's a group of greedy human beings. These greedy human beings have been playing chess with countries, with corporations, making things happen in a row so that they get certain outcomes.
Whether we like it or not, our smartphones are data mining machines. Researchers examined 250 of the most popular apps on iPhone and Android, and they found that roughly 60% of these apps share your data with other websites and advertisers. Even weather apps were using user data for advertising purposes. The best way to avoid this invasion of privacy is through the use of a VPN. Virtual Shield is my favorite and should be used by everyone who cares about privacy. You can head over to virtualshield.com, and in the download tab, I'm going to choose Firefox. And click Install Now to add the Virtual Shield add-on. It's just that easy. And get started with your free 30-day trial. Install it, click Connect. You'll see the shield turn from red to green, and you'll see how from my initial service provider I was able to even change my IP. Virtual Shield Network protected. If you're looking for a way to protect your data from advertisers and corporations, you'll love Virtual Shield. Get 50% off Virtual Shield for the next 24 hours by going to virtualshield.com/adapt2030 or click the link in the description box below. And now on with the video. Because it's been business as usual, status quo for the last 200 years. Not even question the institutional step-by-step, old banks, old institutions, old stock markets, old companies, valuations moving your way, whatever it was rock solid for 200 years. And then just 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to throw it all away and change of society. Everybody sees it happening, but they're just questioning why it's happening. Well, the entire thing's about to dissolve anyway based on solar cycles. So who or what knew these solar cycles were coming to extract all these minerals at the cost of the Earth? Because the Earth's going to shift and reform itself anyway during this time. So it didn't matter what we did to the planet. It's all going to reform itself anyway. The enormous amount of volcanic eruptions, land subsidence, landslides, all these things are going to change. It wouldn't even matter. We can't even dent the Earth. And the cataclysms, I mean, we were like an ant on the windshield. And then so whoever knew these cycles has figured out that whatever we sacrificed in the last 200 years in terms of getting us up to here, something was extracted over these last 200 years. And now we're all being sacrificed and sent out to the wolves in these 4 to 5 years. And we're coming to this magnetic field anomaly. And then we're going into crypto and whatever. There's something far more nefarious and scripted and known timelines taking us through these changes.
When you were sitting there talking about the oil and how they can't get rid of the certain parts of their product.
The bitumen, they call it, the actual proper term for that is bitumen. That after they do the tar sands extraction and they do a bitumen, well, what are they going to do with that?
Yeah, so they got to find some place to put it, and they're not allowed to just throw it away into the environment. It sounds real similar, and what's funny is you started out with the concrete manufacturing. In order to do that, we need a fluorosilicic acid. Or at least that's a byproduct of whatever they do to make concrete so you can have it in a bag. But they're not allowed to just go dump that in any lake or stream or river or in the ocean. They can't just dump it in, on land and let the land absorb it. They'll get fined by the EPA. It's horrible. It's acidic, toxic. But what they can do is sell it to the city municipalities, and they can put it in your water so you can drink it and have nice tea. It's funny. It's another one of those things. They didn't have any place to put a product because of the law. So they found some place in a gray area where it's not against the law, making human beings basically the filter for their toxic waste. It was just like right on par. You're talking about just making the roads. The entire system is set up to be a failure, to crumble, degrade what's there from the human being all the way to the roads. You're right. Why don't we use known better techniques to do things? It's so that you have to buy a new product. It's just like if you were to buy an iPad when they first came out, you would know now that even if you kept it in pristine condition and it was brand new and mint condition, it wouldn't be able to be used for anything because they obsoleted it by changing all the operating systems, the protocols, etc., where your device doesn't do anything. And from what I've been reading into the auto manufacturing, this is also going in the same path where the cars will now be AI. They won't let you drive. Not only that, it'll become obsolete in a few years, so you'll have to buy another one. And if you are a rich person, you might be able to afford the special licensing and insurance it would take to drive a gas-powered car down these oil roads. And I'm sure they're still going to use oil to make on the roads, even though your AI car may slam into a semi while you're watching Harry Potter in the back seat.
One word for you, naphtha. Any of you who have a natural gas well on your property, you're going to get that condensation, or that what they call condensate, coming off where the pipes are connecting because it's too cold. Because when you're pulling the gas out of the ground, obviously you're going to get that, like we do everywhere. And if you can drip it off like you would a still, you can get something called naphtha. And I was talking to an old guy. There's an old guy who used to do oil well drilling, and they're like, man, we would all take the naphtha and just take barrels of that in our back trunks and drive across the country, because there was more calories in that thing if you're going to look on a calorific basis than even 98 fuel. Is like, dude, this is like 120 octane kind of stuff. Naphtha. And they're like, just get the condensate coming off the wellhead. So if you think liquid fuels are going to go away, you're well mistaken, because just like I was talking about, distilling alcohol burns as long as it's at a higher octane. Everclear is a perfect example. Anybody know Everclear? You could burn that in your car. You could also produce that in your home if you know how to distill, but you have to do like a triple distillation and try to get that to the higher, alcohol levels. Well, I'd say one last thing here. One of the reasons I've been reading a lot about alcohol distilling, because I believe it is the future for us as a homesteader, anybody out there. You can use it to make your own rubbing alcohols. If you have any fruit or any grain, you can make alcohol. And that's great. And then it stops there. The conversation goes, are you going to get drunk a lot? Okay, that's for the simpleton. Take it out a little bit further. If you triple or double distill it, you can get higher and higher proof on the alcohol that you're producing. So I'm looking at making my own medicines. Once you make a tincture, if you have something that's in the 95% range, you can put that into the water. If it's aqueous distillate, or if you're using water to take out the constituent in your herb or whatever it is, you can add alcohol in there to keep it for a very long time in a mason jar. Or you can actually distill and make your own rubbing alcohols that you would put directly on your wounds. Because you're working on a farm and we're in a grid down kind of thing. You're going to get cut all the time and you're going to get super infected. You got no alcohols or no way to clean your skin. You're going to have a serious problem. But in the third thing, it can run your car. And looking back in history, the whole thing about the Prohibition, what was the stories that were fed for Prohibition? Oh, the wives all started it. They were worried about their husbands drinking because the husbands were making moonshine somewhere. That's the whole story you're fed. But in actuality, all the farmers were brewing their own corn or whatever distillates, their own moonshines, and they were putting that into their automobiles and running for free. But that was the very same transition point where we talked about in the beginning of the show, 1913, electric cars got whacked at the knees, and suddenly these fossil fuel burning cars came out. And guess who's in the same place again? The energy companies, as we know, as Standard Oil, etc., were the ones who were selling the product to make the cars run, but the farmers were all producing their own fuels by making their own alcohols on the farms, which cut into their profit line. So what did they do? They got the same thing again. Reefer madness. We got prohibition, and it all circles back again. You cut out the profit. So then they made brewing your own alcohol, making your own, distilling your own alcohol illegal, because then you had to go buy the product directly from the petrol station again. And no kidding, you all try to disprove me on that. That is the true reason that Prohibition came into being for alcohol.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly why. And at the same time, like you pointed out with the reefer madness, DuPont was coming out with a whole line of plastics, medicines, and other things that they needed to use petroleum. So they couldn't be having this hemp people over here making all the same products. So they wanted to get rid of that too. Plus, they probably at the time also realized what a natural wonder hemp would be as far as biofuel and the fact that people could make it. Now, I hate to do this to you, David, but you paint these visual pictures for me and my mind just goes down it. And I started thinking about that poor farmer out there in the Permian Basin or in Texas or Oklahoma or wherever they live that's just farming, doing their thing, but they so happen to sell the rights to the oil and they got a fracking machine or a natural gas thing or whatever it is that they got a methanol well on their property. Now, when things go flip-flop in the economy and everything's crazy, there are still corporations with lots of resources. And this is one aspect we haven't really talked about. You know, we talked about military, we talked about marauders and things like this, but don't forget the corporation and the stake that they have in the future. They, in their minds, own these wells, these pumps, these places that are bringing raw energy out. And of course, they're going to be guarded or taken. It may be the military instead of a corporation, but you can bet that if you own a farm and you happen to, you know, let the people know that you have some stuff there and you're renting it out or you're selling it or you're getting the money off the rights or whatever, however that works, you can bet that those people are going to come claim that portion. And you know what? We might as well just take your farm along with it since you're producing food. If you have a farm and you don't have these things, of course, nobody's going to come looking. But what if you do have a farm and there's maps out there that were already taken of where these veins of raw materials run in the earth, like gold, silver, etc. And they're going to come because they know it's there. And these are things that people don't even think about, that there are people with resources and groups with resources that actually can and will use those resources when things fall apart.
Hempoline.
Oh, yeah.
Is the proper name for that hemp substance you were talking about that runs vehicles. Yeah, Hempoline that's a perfect example, because when you look at the cartels and how much you talk about private militaries inside the industrial complex of a corporation. Are you kidding me? Where they extract oil, they have private armies protecting those facilities. And it's way outside governmental. These are private armies. Mercenaries is the proper term for them.
Yeah, they work for global governance and a
They
central
do,
bank.
absolutely. It's the highest bidder. You know, these guys are rough. They've been through a lot of wars. You know, they extract people and they say, hey, you give me money, you go over here, you protect this thing. Shoot anybody who comes by there. It's cool. No questions asked. Target practice. Have fun. You know, you keep them off the property and no questions asked. And there is an enormous amount of sadistic people who love this kind of stuff. And if you even are 1/5 of 1/8% of kidding yourself that private armies don't exist on our planet, and I mean literally private armies for hire with endless funds to go in and do any action in any location in any jurisdiction across the planet, you are not awake in any shape or form.
Boom. That's absolutely right. And that's exactly what I was talking about. Blackwater companies and groups you probably never even heard of. Some of them are off books. Some of them are shell companies. But you're right. The amount of private armies, that's kind of what I'm talking about. It wouldn't be even just one government. There's these governmental forces all across the planet. And I'm going to say most of which the common person doesn't even know about or has never seen or heard about. It's like at the top, past the echelon that we know about, into more of the pyramid that you'll never get to see. The evidence of it not being there is evidence of it being there. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on when we're kind of looking for trends and things and the way things are going, is finding out known information from the past. But not just that, you have to read between the lines. When certain things all happen, you know that there's a force behind that. And if there's no visible force, you have to assume that that force is in the occult. And I kind of joked about 2020 would be the year that the occult came out in the open. And kind of they did, because that's when we got to see the first broad stroke of global governance. Now, I don't know who's running it, and AI can go into woo-woo, but just say it's a group of greedy human beings. These greedy human beings have been playing chess with countries, with corporations, making things happen in a row so that they get certain outcomes. And you know that these people believe certain weird things by what they put out into the world. So if you know what's kind of in the occult realm, and then you compare that to current events, you kind of see a shadowy plan unfolding. I don't think it's woo-woo. I think it's right there in your face, and that we're still arguing smaller points as far as a people coming to the realities that we don't want to face. And I think this last push may have gone a little prematurely and woken too many people up. And that may be why it kind of seems haphazard. But even that probably was planned.
You look at it, and at the power elite at the top, you're like, yeah, look at all these sheep. We can do what we want with them. Nobody's going to question anything. So you actually see that in real time happening right now. Your one point brought me back to that movie, John Wick. The whole premise I got out of that movie was what you talked about, that invisible layer of the way it really works at that echelons of private bodyguards and the hired assassins and everything that goes along with people trying to take out families, people to try to take out business alliances, people to try to take out business interests that stand in their way for the next move on the chessboard, all bought and paid for by those secret armies, and then those others behind, those protective secret protectors or whatever you would call them, that people are hiring all these private mercenaries and bodyguards to protect each other in the money realms of such opulence that we would consider like Greek gods and echelons in the Parthenon kind of opulence that goes on just on a daily level that is so far like 5,000x above us in terms of money. Not 50x. That's way too under. 500x, you're getting close. But you look at that John Wick things where these guys are all in castles and going around. I think there was a lot of truth to that movie.
I do too, especially their payment method. And you notice
that payment methods, right?
I've seen that in so many shows over the years that the true payment method is always some kind of gold or silver coins. And they're always printed in these movies in a way that, like you've never seen that. You might have seen a bar of gold, but you've never seen that coin. Those coins were taken all over the world. And, another weird thing about that movie that you pointed out, John Wick, you notice that they have the blood oaths in there for contracts and stuff like that, and favors that you have to abide by because you're part of that system and have to play by their rules.